In this video, you'll learn an assortment of tips and tricks. Notice that I'm in Adobe InCopy CC, and I'm currently working with the file IC0801 tipsandtricks.indd. Here are my top 10 tips and tricks for using InDesign and InCopy. Number one is you can use trackpad gestures to do things like rotate the page view. For example, if you have some text that's upside down, as you see with the answers here, if you have a trackpad on your computer or laptop, you can simply twist your fingers on the trackpad so that it spins it, just like you were opening a jar. So each time you spin, it'll rotate. And then you can simply pan or pinch and zoom, and then you can see the answers down here. Now, it's important to realize that there's no command on the View menu to rotate the spread like there is in InDesign. So if somebody saves an InDesign document like sideways or upside down, you'll need to have a trackpad to unrotate it or have the InDesign user do that for you before they save the file. So the next tip is to convert text to a note. I'll go ahead and switch to the text tool here. And it's a good idea to work inside of the either galley or story view when you work with notes. I'll go ahead and triple click this line to select the text. That way when I switch to galley view, and I'll use the keyboard shortcut Command G, that would be Control G on Windows. That way I can see where the text is when I transition to galley view. So here you can see there's some text, and if you want to convert that text to a note, you can simply select it with the type tool, and when you select the text, you can go to the note menu, and then you can convert it to a note. Now keep in mind, of course, you have to check in the story before you do that, and I've already checked this in, so it'll allow me to do that. But you can simply press the space bar to check in a story. And then conversely, notice that if you're in a note, you also have a command to do the opposite. You can convert a note to text. And that can be really useful if somebody writes a note that has a sentence or two that you want to use actually in your story. Notice you can also collapse notes as well. The next tip is about working with Autosize and anchored text boxes. And there's a file here called Autosize and Anchored Text Tests INDD that's also in your Lesson 8 folder. And this is a really interesting test file that I've worked with here. If you use the feature in InDesign to automatically size text boxes, you'll maybe be surprised to see that doesn't actually happen in InCopy as it does in InDesign. For example, I'll go ahead and select this assignment here, and I'll go to the panel menu and check out all those text boxes there so I can edit them. So if you are in here with the type tool in InCopy and you press return to add another line, this oversets as opposed to grow the size of the height of the box. And to see how that works and compare that with InDesign, I'll go ahead and check all the stories back in, make sure I have the main assignment selected, and then I'll do check in selection and then click OK. And then that way I go back to InDesign, and then of course I'm going to have to update here. There's a little button right here to update the content. And you can see that now it just automatically sized that box, as InDesign just normally does. That's just a feature of AutoFit. I'll just select it with the text tool and go to text frame options. And specifically on the Autosize text frame options here, you can see it's auto-sizing the height only and it's pinned to the center. And there are many other things that you can do with this. Just be aware that the InCopy users will see overset text, and when you update in InDesign, it'll work, and they'll need to update the content and the design before they'll be able to see that. So I encourage you to explore this file and just be aware of things that, a text box with anchored text, such as this, is an anchored text feature in InDesign as well. You can see this little leash here. So it travels with the text box. That's not automatically included with assignments. You'll need to select all or just, add all objects into the assignment. And there are commands, of course, on the assignment panel menu to add, all your content to any given story. So you want to make sure that that's available, and at least they can edit it in layout view. They won't see it in story view, oddly enough. There's some glitches with that. And again, there used to be a nasty bug that's since been fixed. You want to make sure that you'll be notified by Adobe's little application manager here if there's updates available, as well as you can just go to help and choose updates and make sure you have the latest patches. But early versions of InDesign were really buggy with this particular technology, especially when it comes to an auto-size text box with anchored text. This is a really interesting experiment you want to explore if that's something that you use within InDesign or InCopy. It's a really useful feature. It just, is not fully integrated into InCopy, so you need to do some experimenting with this file perhaps. So I'll go ahead and switch back into InCopy here. And the next tip is for special sideways panels, such as character and paragraph styles and so forth. Notice that up here at the top, I'm currently on the Essentials workspace, and this is the defaults other than I've brought assignments up, which of course is under Window Assignments here. But if you want to actually use different panels up here, perhaps, for example, if you're working with a layout-driven workflow, rather than have the character and paragraph panels, or what these are, notice you can actually detach these, and then you actually see that's the character panel in its full glory. And you might perhaps park that over here on the side, as you do in InDesign. And then this is the paragraph panel. I'll just pull that out as well. And then notice this little button here is like a three-way light switch. It'll expand and collapse the panel. And again, I like to perhaps dock that over there. And you might want to put like your styles up here. For example, if you go to Window and choose Styles, you might put Paragraph Styles. You can see that comes up here. Don't confuse paragraph styles with paragraph. Those are two different things. You might want to just dock those up here, as well as if you go Window Shopping, again for Styles, and select Character Styles, or perhaps Table and Cell Styles, you might want those as well. Notice that those can dock horizontally, and not all panels can do that, but it's worthy of trying with all of them. That way, if you're in charge of making sure everything has the appropriate styles, you'll just have pull-down menus right here to select your styles. So you might find that to perhaps be a better way of arranging your panels. And you can do the same thing down here at the bottom as well. Notice that this is the preview for the Story Editor 2, which, oddly enough, that one is kind of interesting. That doesn't go to a full panel, nor does it have a close box. That's kind of a unique panel. I've not seen anything quite like that before. So, and you may or may not need this. If once you pick a style for your preview for your story and gallery view, you might not need this, but you might put it at the end so it's not in the way. You can also bring up this copy fit panel here, perhaps. And again, if you're working with an editorial workflow and maybe you're not concerned about whether it's over or underset, you might simply close this panel, perhaps, and then you won't be distracted by that. And you might put something else down there, for example, under Window. If you're working with the Track Changes feature, perhaps, you might put, although it comes up at the top here, you might put that perhaps down here at the bottom, as well as Change Info is another one that goes along with that. And in InDesign, this is actually part of one panel. This is a very important part when you're working with track changes. You really need to see who said what and when. This will show the username as well as the change time and the change date and the type of change they made. So that's a very important thing to have. And again, you can put that at the top or the bottom. It's your choice. But once you find, palette utopia or panel nirvana is what I call that, consider making a new workspace. And you might just give that your name or initials. I'll just type DC as in Digital Classroom for brevity's sake. And you can capture your panel locations. And if you highlight any menus, under the Edit menu, you can choose to highlight menus. It'll capture that. And then that way you can go back to that workspace and have that whenever you need it. And then let's talk about bullets and numbering, which is something that's typically handled with a style as the best practice. You'll have a number step or a number bullet perhaps. But if you want to do manual bulleting and numbering, I'll just click down here at the end here. You can turn it on, and it's well hidden. It's on the Paragraph panel menu. And you'll see down here where it says bullets and numbering. Now, when you have a panel that's horizontal up here, the panel menu appears at the end here. So, if this is paragraph panels up there, that's how you'd get here. And then you have the choice of using perhaps bullets. And Adobe gives you, a basic suggestion there that you might use that little triangle there, but you can always add your own. You might use, I'll just type a W for wingdings down here and tap tab so it goes there. So you might choose, little ballot boxes or something. You can just add those in, and then you'll be able to use that perhaps as a bullet. And they'll automatically generate when you press return. And then you can also do numbering here as well. And it's a pretty comprehensive system. However, bullets and numbering tends to be problematic in InDesign in my experience, especially if you do things like convert text to outlines. They disappear, although you convert them to static and they don't. And it's difficult sometimes to maintain the numbering, although there is a list feature you can use. That can be kind of complicated too at different levels, and it's really best to automate that with styles. In some cases, you may have to do manual numbering, is usually what, if you're doing a sophisticated type of style, you may wind up doing. But just know that you have that access here, and this is covered comprehensively in our other videos for InDesign. Whenever you access a feature like this, this is the same technology as InDesign. So you can search digitalclassroom.com and learn how to do bullets and numbering there. So just, quite a bit to know about that, obviously. And then this is a really cool thing to do, a interactive PDF quiz with buttons. I'm just going to switch back to layout view here so you can see over here. I've created a button that shows and hides the answers here. Now you can't access those within InCopy. You won't see those in the story view, and you can't really even select or edit them. Even if you try to assign it, it just won't do that. And of course you need InDesign to actually export an interactive PDF file. I'll just switch to Acrobat to show you, I've already done that. So as you just hover over show answers, it'll show them, and if you move your mouse, it disappears. And I'll show you in InDesign how I did that. Here in the Tips and Tricks file, this button here, I used the Buttons and Forms panel, and that's available in InDesign under Window, Interactive. You'd see here's Buttons and Forms, and you can put this panel wherever you want. But this particular button is set to Show the Answers is the name of the button on rollover, and then it uses the Show Hide Buttons and Forms feature, and it simply shows the answers button that I made down here. And you can see that's just simply rotated text that's been made into a button called Answers, and the button is instructed to show that. So that's that one, and you might consider using conditional text too as another option in InCopy to perhaps have an instructor guide that has the answers, and they may not need to be upside down. So the next tip is for using scripts and also QR codes. Let's start with scripts. Very much like you have in InDesign, if you go to Window and you choose Utilities down here, you'll find there's a scripts panel. And this has some really useful scripts. There are several that come with InCopy as well as InDesign. Here under JavaScript, for example, you can simply select a paragraph, or series of paragraphs here. I'll just select this text here. And then when you double click on Sort Paragraph, you have a choice of maintaining the formatting. And in this case, they all use the same style. So I'll just leave it to the faster version there, but you could also use the other one. And you can also do reverse and so forth. But if you just click OK, you can see that's sort of the list for you. And there are many other scripts that you can add in, such as adding a column of numbers with currency, for example. And again, these are topics that are covered here at digitalclassroom.com as part of the InDesign curriculum. So you'll be able to use the same technology. You just need to load your scripts. You can reveal in Finder or Explorer to show where your scripts are, and then you just copy scripts in there, and they'll appear in your user folder so that you can have those and do some amazing things. There's a lot of power there with scripts. And there's also access to the QR codes feature here. I'll just kind of scroll down. You can see I already have a QR code here, but I'll just click here to show you if you want to insert one. It's a good idea to set the leading to about 72 points so that it'll clear that. And then here under the Object menu, if you know how to use this in InDesign, it's the same technology. When you choose Generate QR Code, you have several different options. If you want to set like a web link like you see here, or just plain text, or perhaps email or business card. And you can even change the color of it. So for example, I just used the Pantone purple. That's the official color for InCopy. So when you click, generate, it will just make a QR code like you see there. And if you want to edit one, you can just go select it with the content tool is what I have there. And then you'll see it has the ability to, if you're talking to it, to edit the QR code, I believe. So under Object, I think you have to actually go that. There we go. You may have to go that in InDesign. So the next tip is to explore extensions. And this is perhaps, one of the more interesting things, just like with InDesign as well. If you go to the Window menu, you can choose where it says Extensions, and then Adobe Exchange is kind of the marketplace, kind of like the Apple Store or the Android Store, so you can shop for different free or perhaps paid little plugins that are known as extensions. And you'll see, there's advertisements here for the most popular ones perhaps. However, you want to search perhaps for a particular topic, and I'm just going to type in InCopy here just so you can see. There's just quite frankly just a handful of utilities at the moment, but that's not, by any means the limits of what's available elsewhere. This is just people that are currently in this Adobe Exchange store here. So you see there's a thing here called Radish. That's a version control utility for InDesign and InCopy. There's also this one here for control changes. However, this one apparently hasn't been updated for InDesign and InCopy CC yet. And it's important to realize that, if you're working with a team of people, that everybody would have to have this extension perhaps. And of course, you want to read the reviews. I'll just go back to the previous thing there and this other thing here to create recipes and so forth. So you might find, if InDesign or InCopy doesn't do something, chances are there's a plugin somewhere that does. And you don't hesitate to just Google search for that. And the next tip is about exporting InCopy stories and creating assignments. You can either right-click or drag-drop in InDesign. InCopy cannot create assignments. You can only see and check things in and out here. So I'll switch over to InDesign. And I just want to show you that if you want to create, for example, a assignment, you can simply right-click is one way of doing it. And you'll find down here, depending on what you have selected, you'll have the same things that you do on the panel menu. So if you're a fan of right-clicking, notice you also have the update content feature there as well. You can see it updates the content. And then you can also just drag and drop a series of selected objects onto this little new button right here. It's a bit of a leap of faith, but when you do that, you'll be prompted to create a new assignment. So you can simply maybe select all with Control A, or just shift click a bunch of objects and just drag it onto that little new assignment button. And that's the same thing as making a new assignment right here. Keep in mind this just makes an assignment, and then you'd have to add content to it, whereas this does both if you want to add a new assignment in one fell swoop. So that's that one. And the most important one, item number 10 down here, is don't forget to check in and check out all appropriate assignments. If you're working with a team of people, there's nothing to really stop you from checking out and holding hostage, is what I call it, other people's assignments. So only check in, things that are assigned to you, and then don't forget to check out so that it's released, so that the InDesign or other editors can access that. And you'll be prompted to do the appropriate thing when you close a file. And that's quite frankly the best practice, is that when you close a file, you'll be prompted to check in and update. But there's buttons here to update the content, as well as when you save the file. Make sure in InDesign you save the file. If you see an asterisk here, it's on the right-hand side on Windows, that the file is up to date. And then InCopy users have on their assignments panel, they may need to update the design. There's a button right here, it's not appropriate now, as well as the content. And that way everything is in sync. And again, closing out the files should prompt you appropriately to release everything so that you're not holding anyone up so they can continue with the production process. So that's about all we have time for in this series. By all means, I encourage you to search for other topics here at digitalclassroom.com. And on behalf of digitalclassroom.com, this is Bill Carberry saying, learn something new every day.